Hello, everyone. This is Taya Graham. I'm your host for the Police Accountability Report here at the Real News Network. Now, before we get to today's episode, we want to give viewers a brief disclaimer. In this episode, we cover a controversial figure, Eric Brandt. He's a cop watcher and activist who we've discussed previously on this show. As we mentioned in today's episode, Brandt has become well known in the cop watching community and beyond for his activism, his controversial tactics for protesting, and confronting law enforcement. As we also note in this episode, Brandt has faced legal charges for his tactics and behavior. This includes felony charges that were filed against Brandt for making violent and graphic threats against a Denver judge over the phone and on YouTube, according to court records. I want to be clear. The point of the following episode of the PAR is not to obscure or minimize these serious charges against Brandt. We fully acknowledge the severity of these charges, but as we will explain in the episode, the point of our coverage is to examine how Brandt himself, his activism, the legal charges against him, and the legal victories he has secured in court fit into a larger grassroots effort to hold police accountable in the United States. Because all these things bear directly on the issues that we here at the PAR cover on a weekly basis and the issues that civilians face on a daily basis. So thank you so much for watching. And now, on to the episode. Hello, my name is Taya Graham, and welcome to the Police Accountability Report. As I always make clear, this show has a single purpose, holding the politically powerful institution of policing accountable. And to do so, we don't just focus on the bad behavior of individual cops. Instead, we examine the system that makes bad policing possible. And today, we're going to achieve this goal by focusing on two developing stories. First, the stunning sentence handed out to controversial cop watcher Eric Brandt last week by a Denver judge, and then by reporting on another death in police custody tied to the use of a dangerous drug, ketamine. But before I get started, I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct, please email it to us privately at par@therealnews.com, and we might be able to investigate for you. And of course, you can always message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Facebook or Twitter. And please like, share, and comment on our videos. It really does help us. And you know I read your comments and appreciate them. Now, even within the community of cop watchers known for unconventional tactics, the man we're about to report on stands out. His name is Eric Brandt, and he is a well-known advocate for the homeless and a staunch law enforcement critic. Brandt is also famous for, or infamous for, depending on your perspective, for more flamboyant tactics than most. He is paraded around Denver with a sign that says, F the Cops, and is the composer and author of songs like Happy F the Cops Day. He does this with aplomb and with a provocative sense of humor as he protests police brutality.
Happy, happy, happy fuck the cops day. It's every day of the week.
He also has been a fierce advocate for the mistreated homeless people in the city of Denver, activism which has been critical to calling attention to a growing problem as the number of people living on the streets has ballooned from 7,000 to roughly 31,000 over the past decade. We spoke to Brandt about his approach shortly before his sentencing this past Monday. As he explains it, his tactics received no attention until he started using what he calls the magic 8 letters. Let's listen.
I had just discovered the magic 8 letters. And I discovered that because this same cop that kept giving me trouble pissed me off one day. I was building a float for a bicycle trailer because I found a bunch of chicken wire. I knew immediately what I was going to do with it. I was making a big upside down pig. And my friend Nicole, she says, you should make a middle finger that comes out of the butthole that says, fuck the police. That was a great idea, except this angle was more machinery. I could do this angle better. So I did this angle. And I just had a piece of foam core that I cut with a knife and wrote fuck cops on it. I thought 8 letters would be better than fuck the police if you're going to be driving by it. And it was my prototype and it was working. And Drew Smith pissed me off again one day. And so I snatched that damn thing off the top of my float and I stuck it on a stick and I walked Rusty down the street with it. I went 6 blocks round trip. I had a bottle of water thrown at me. I had people take pictures. I had people cheer me. I had horns honking. And I went back to the house and I'm like, guys, I have found the magic 8 letters. Fuck cops.
But some say Brandt has gone too far, and one of those critics happened to be a judge who could do something about it. Last Monday, he sentenced Brandt, to 12 years behind bars for making a series of threats. The threats were made over the course of several years, during which Brandt was angered about legal decisions that have been part of the ongoing conflict between him and the Denver judiciary and other free speech activists.
You're hoping their brains get splattered on their children. And if anybody listening is not offended by that, there's something wrong with you. Mr. Brandt, on each of these 3 counts, you're sentenced to 4 years in the Department of Corrections.
One case included cop watcher Otto the Watchdog, who, while walking out of a courtroom, gave the judge a finger after being denied a public defender and was subsequently sentenced to 30 days in a Denver jail. Later, Brandt responded to Otto's incarceration with a highly objectionable statement about the judge, which led to one of the charges. In all, Brandt was charged with 3 felony counts of retaliation against public officials. We actually filed a motion with the court to film the proceedings, but the judge denied it. However, we were able to attend the hearing and talk to people outside of the courtroom. I don't think anyone would take issue with the notion that Brandt's threats were inappropriate and hurtful. No one, least of all PAR, thinks there's any justification for threatening anyone with bodily harm or violence. But we also believe it's important to place any type of behavior in its proper context. Namely, was what happened to Eric Brandt justice? And does his sentence, so to speak, fit the crime? And to discuss it, I'm joined by my reporting partner, Janis. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me.
Tay, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Stephen, first, what was the sentence and how did the judge justify it?
Well, the sentence was for 12 years, 3 charges, 4 consecutive terms. The judge said it was retaliation or retribution, made this sort of opaque and odd argument about the fact that somehow the justice system had to retaliate against Brandt. It was a bizarre hearing. He actually said that one of the victims should get in the ring with Eric and fight it out. So he actually precipitated violence in a court hearing. So it was absolutely contradictory and hard to understand.
So how does this compare to sentences for people who commit violent crimes?
That is a great question, Taya, and it's something we're investigating right now. We are looking for sentencing data in the Denver municipal court system to come up with some comparisons. But just look at the case of Officer Amber Geiger, who killed Botham Jean, who shot him and killed him in his own apartment while he's sitting there eating ice cream. She got 10 years. 10 years. I think the average sentence for a rape is like 8 years. So really, it's really hard to justify it in the sense that Mr. Brandt did not commit a violent crime or has never been accused of committing a violent crime, only threatening and using provocative speech.
So what was the reaction from the community?
Well, I think the community was stunned. I think some people thought he might get some jail time, but 12 years really stunned the community. And we spoke to some people after the sentencing, and they were very upset. Let's listen.
So this is miscarriage of justice, because if somebody would say it to me, it would have been dismissed.
There was a moment where the judge separated morals from law, and then all of a sudden pushed them back together. I don't understand that. Everyone knows what he said was morally wrong. But legally wrong?
Well, I don't know.
I just don't see it. And I don't think that anybody in there proved that it was.
I think for the people who are supporters of Eric Brandt, this seems disproportionate and really hard to understand. I think for many of them, they have helped him so much in their lives, and they see this as sort of a condemnation of the activist community and of the idea that you can hold the judicial system accountable. And I think that's why they're all stunned and extremely upset.
I think Stephen makes an interesting point that is worth fleshing out. I mean, Eric's words were disturbing and cannot be condoned, but considered within the context of how our current system of crony capitalism, which profits off hate, disinformation, and anger, is this punishment proportionate? I mean, Google, Facebook, and Twitter had made billions off of hate groups, anti-vaxxers, baseless conspiracy theories, and election disinformation. That info is spread purposefully via an algorithm that manipulates our attention by emphasizing fear for cash. And some of this content, as we have seen in the past, has led to actual violence with actual victims. In fact, a little-known law known as Section 230, passed in 1997, actually absolved these megacorporations of any liability for libelous or objectionable posts made on their site. What's ironic about that special exemption is that while it holds these companies harmless for harmful speech, it doesn't prevent them from profiting off it. And that's the point of talking about Eric at all, because his case raises many uncomfortable questions about our First Amendment rights, the sanctity of free speech, and when self-expression crosses the line. But even amid all these questions, there was another development that shows why Eric's behavior in these individual cases can't be the sole criteria for judging his activism. That's because just a week before Eric was sentenced, there was a tragic development in Colorado involving chemical restraints, which resulted in another police custody death. The chemical restraint, a drug called ketamine, has been widely used in Colorado to subdue people during encounters with police. The use of ketamine came under fire after the death of Colorado resident Elijah McLean. McLean was walking in Aurora, Colorado when police accosted him after someone called and reported that he was behaving strangely. Police administered ketamine to McLean, who was pronounced dead an hour later. 2 weeks ago, we uncovered a similar situation which unfolded in Springs, Colorado, with similarly tragic results. 26-year-old Hunter Barr was reportedly under the influence of LSD and was having a so-called bad trip. His father, fearing an overdose, called the police, who again decided to have ketamine administered to subdue him. We do have the body camera footage of this encounter, but before we share it, I want to warn viewers that it is disturbing. And as you watch this, I want you to take notice. In the police report, both officers said that Hunter was resisting them, that he was stiffening his body, lifting the officers off the ground, and that he was difficult to control. I want you to watch this video closely to see if you believe this young man was unable to be controlled by multiple officers.
Yeah, he's in handcuffs, but he's real uncooperative. You've got medical come up. They might need to give him something.
Come on, buddy. Let's get you on flat ground, okay?
That's good.
All right, Hunter?
That's good.
Oh, no.
Are you okay?
Okay.
right.
You're all right?
Okay.
Wait. Stay here, buddy.
You're okay.
Just stay here, buddy. We're going to get you help, okay?
No.
Hey.
Get the fuck out of here, bro!
Hey, stop, Hunter.
I'm gonna roll him.
That arm.
Trade
Get
you.
that arm.
Yep, you good?
I got it. All right, buddy.
Wait on
All right.
What's he on? He looks like he's on something. Yeah, I would.
Oh, Hunter.
Hunter. Calm down, Hunter.
Fucking lie.
Hunter, we're going to get you help, buddy.
Dude, you're just gonna hurt yourself, man. Hunter, in slow, out slow, man.
We got people here to help you, all right?
Slow it down, all right?
You'll be all right, man.
Roughly an hour after police had administered ketamine, Hunter was dead. Another casualty of Colorado's widespread use of drugs that the FDA has approved only for use before or during anesthesia in a hospital setting. The state health department informed us there were 902 reported instances of Colorado paramedics administering ketamine from 2018 to 2020. Almost 17% had complications, including cardiac arrest and oxygen deprivation. In just 2 years, almost 1,000 injections. That means every single day a person arrested in Colorado is being injected with ketamine. Which brings me back to Eric Brandt, because Brandt was intimately involved in the struggle to stop police from using ketamine. He was a major supporter of the efforts of Councilman Springsteen and others to create some system of accountability for the blanket waivers that had been granted by Colorado health officials to EMT units across the state. In fact, Springsteen even attended Brandt's sentencing and spoke on his behalf, in part thanks to his efforts and support of activists trying to stop the administration of ketamine to innocent civilians. And they are innocent until proven guilty. Isn't that how it's supposed to work? And I think that's why we've reported on Eric in the past and will continue to do so in the future. If you look at the mainstream media coverage of Eric Brandt, or ketamine for that matter, it always seems to miss the underlying systemic issues, which inform both Eric's work and the seemingly inexplicable use of a drug best known for, and I'm quoting here, for putting people in a K-hole. What I mean is that the deeper, complex issues that create the need for activism and why the inequitable system which passes hard judgments on them and inflicts nothing on the elite needs to be examined fully, even if it makes them uncomfortable. In other words, we need to look beyond the rhetoric and explore the substance of a system that somehow, out of nowhere, decides that using a volatile chemical restraint on an unsuspecting public is a good idea. Bear in mind that despite our multiple requests for information from Colorado officials, No one has been able to tell us how they even came up with the idea to use ketamine during police custody. Despite sending us dozens of documents outlining procedures for the use of the dangerous drug, no one has offered an explanation as to how the public has become unwitting guinea pigs for an experiment with mercurial and sometimes deadly hallucinogenic. It's kind of stunning when you think about it, and it illuminates the cruelty that emanates from the criminal justice system. I mean, as we've pointed out again and again on this show, the effects of our criminal industrial complex are catastrophic for those who experience its full capacity for vengeance. And very rarely does anyone involved in it pay the price when that power is abused. Consider the story of disabled veteran Sean Worsley. Worsley was arrested in 2016 in Pickens, Alabama for using medical marijuana prescribed for him in Arizona, his home state. Worsley had stopped to buy gas and was accosted by an Alabama police officer who searched his car with Worsley's consent. But when the officer found the marijuana, despite Worsley producing his legal prescription card, the officer arrested him and charged him with a felony. Since then, the cascade of events has been catastrophic for Worsley and his wife, Ebony. Worsley had to pay $400 to get his car out of the impound. His bail was revoked, and he had to travel back to Alabama. Due to court costs and lawyers' fees, he and his wife became homeless. Finally, after several mix-ups due to the burdensome fees and a myriad of court dates, Worsley was sentenced to, wait for it, 60 months in prison for using a legally prescribed medication he had to take after being wounded while serving his country. That's right, a man who suffers from PTSD due to his service in the war in Afghanistan must spend 5 years in prison for having in his possession legally prescribed medication for PTSD. If any case shows just how inhumane and unjust our so-called criminal justice system really is, how its calculated and intrinsic appetite for cruelty continues to define this country, I can't think of one. If there is another, more bleak example of how the police use fundamentally unjust laws to rob the working class of their rights and agency to demand a just and equitable society, then please send it to me. The point is that any system of justice cannot function unless it's constructed around notions of fairness and equity. A truly democratic society cannot exist when it is governed by a separate nation-state of law enforcement that punishes capriciously and without the consent of the people. So yes, what Eric Brandt said was deeply offensive. And yes, no one would want to be subjected to the type of harassment Eric is accused of. But what about the system itself? Does anyone get sentenced when a man goes to jail for 60 months and whose life is destroyed because of the actions of a single cop? Will anyone be punished for yet another avoidable death due to the unintended effects of a dangerous drug administered by people who seem incapable of doing it safely? When law enforcement becomes a tool for economic oppression and enforced inequality, is anyone held accountable? Well, if there are, I haven't seen it. And that's the point we have to remember when we examine cases like Eric's, that our sense of what is a crime and what constitutes fair punishment be considered within the proper context. That whoever and whomever we judge, we view their actions, not just as individuals, but within a system that seems somewhat beyond repair. I would like to thank my guest, Councilwoman Anita Springsteen, and of course, Mr. Eric Brandt for speaking with us. And I would also like to thank intrepid reporter Stephen Janis for his writing, reporting, and editing on this piece.
Tay, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And of course, I have to thank friend of the show, Noli D, for her support. Thanks, Noli D. And I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct or brutality, please share it with us and we might be able to investigate. Please reach out to us. You can email us tips privately at par@therealnews.com and share your evidence of police misconduct. You can also message us at Police Accountability Report on Facebook or Instagram, or at Eyes on Police on Twitter. And of course, you can always message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Twitter or Facebook. And please like and comment. I do read the comments and I appreciate them. And I try to answer your questions whenever I can. And if you have the means, please hit the donate link below. My name is Taya Graham, and I'm your host of the Police Accountability Report. Please be safe out there.